Right, as you know, August was really a crazy month for Indonesia. To list out some of the things that happened, we have our president allegedly trying to take over political parties. We have a random dude who crashed our investments and take power in a political party filled with investors. And finally, we have massive protests against Jokowi breaking out nationwide because he wants his son to run for governor. Well, in reality, it was a really bad fumble by Dasko, who panicked because the Gelora party accidentally ruined the coalition. So yeah, August was a really crazy month, and it was my birthday no less, but at least it made my birthday a bit more fun.
Happy birthday!
So why do I want to talk about August when we've moved away from it? I want to talk about August because during that month, Indonesia has managed to rediscover, quote-unquote, democracy. And at the same time, I want to talk about why it's okay for the government to skip over it. As you know, quote-unquote democracy is something new in Indonesia. It only existed for 25 years practically, which was the result of us protesting hard against Suharto, and Indonesians practice democracy like your friend Joe with his New Year's resolution. They start off strong, but fizzle out, often at the expense of reason. Indonesians can't deal with democracy after living so long under a ruthless authoritarian dictator that often says no but means a yes, or a yes that means a no. God, imagine being led by somebody with the same temperament as your mother-in-law. I'm kidding. I love you, Suharto. And now, the generation that lived under peak Suharto is leading Indonesia. So naturally, you'd have these undemocratic spirits leading a democratic country. And following these past few years, if you look at the statistics, democracy is decreasing in Indonesia. Maybe it's the result of us not being wise with democracy. Maybe we're not culturally compatible with democracy. Wrong! Most of the rules or movements that are stamped with the consequence of decreasing democracy are often because it is the result of democracy, ironically. Take, for example, Joko Widodo has been pinned as the central figure responsible for decreasing democracy in Indonesia, which is a flip back from his previous reputation as the unifier of all levels of Indonesian society. Jokowi campaigned on a platform of populism and managed to convince the Indonesian society that whatever he's doing is to the benefit of the people. And the people were sold. Throughout his tenure, there is objectively a decrease in democracy. But in spite of that, Indonesia's economic growth is good with a steady GDP, and there is a decrease in poverty. But then again, these improvements are haunted by inflation going up and a discontent middle class that are chafing under financially suffocating policies like TAPRA and expensive tuition fees. A majority of these middle classes happen to be Gen Zs. But let me get back to democracy again. How does this relate to what I said before? Well, you see, Joko Widodo and a majority of the people ruling the government are a generation of people that was raised to see democracy as a tool.
Democracy basically means by the people, but the people are retarded.
Back in the New Order, which was Indonesia between 1965 and 1998, media and free speech was suppressed. Anyone expressing opposition to the government were labeled as criminals, making people raised under the Suharto era view democracy negatively with suspicion and skepticism. Meanwhile, the people born after Suharto, inside the Reformation era, experienced shifting views. Democracy was instilled in the government, and many Indonesians born from 1981 all the way up to now view democracy in a positive light. You can see that there is a dissonance between how two generations view democracy. One viewing it with skepticism, having never been used to practicing democracy, and the other attached to it, living with democracy becoming a norm as the result of democratic reform. So you have rulers who are not attached to democracy and a generation of younger people enshrining democracy. Naturally, there's going to be a conflict here. And this is best exemplified in the exchange between celebrity political consultant Kodari and entrepreneur financial content creator Raymond Chin. I think the stuff that went down in August further reinforces my notions. Rulers, they don't necessarily see democracy as important. Democracy is a tool to control society. It is not the end. Which is why it was easy for them to summon a meeting and attempt to draft a bill in 2 days. Meanwhile, the younger generation view this as an affront to democracy, and so the Peringatan Darurat social movement rises to counter this blatant disrespect to protocols. And while the government caved into public pressure, the truth is, the government caved to pressure between the government. I think the dissonance between how the younger and older generations view democracy will contribute to more conflict in the future. As long as the older Suharto-era individuals rule the government, there will be tensions inside policy making, governance, law, and political culture. And seeing as the oldest people raised in the Suharto era are around late 60s and early 70s, the median age for politicians in Indonesia is above the age of 55, representing an older political class dominating our country. So if we forecast, these pragmatic coded boomers will stay in power for almost 30 years. I feel like the amount of time they have in power will impact Indonesia's evolving national identity and political culture. And I think it's already beginning. Many Gen Zs and millennials have expressed a loss of hope towards the political process in Indonesia. Being born and raised to enjoy democracy, free speech, enshrining freedom, the two young generations are suddenly met with the awful truth that what they were raised to value ultimately meant jack shit to the people running the country. And this dominance of boomers in Indonesia fosters a mindset that reduces vital concepts like democracy to mere tools for gaining power or exerting control. This instrumental approach overlooks the true significance and purpose of these principles. Rather than embracing democracy as a vehicle for citizen empowerment and institutional accountability, it is often seen as a means to an end, distorting its essence and preventing its proper application, thus weakening democratic values in the country. It also has the added bonus of turning disillusioned or overly ambitious young Indonesians into dangerous careerists veering on authoritarian supporters. So this isn't all good for governance because it pushes the wrong kinds of young politicians and government officials forward into the limelight. So this problem has become structural to the point of being inherent. The case of Yasmin Noor is a prime example. Yasmin Noor, age 32, is a millennial presidential staff that went crazy on Twitter after she thought that she was being shaded by a random Twitter user. After posting an entire tangent about how her work is important and to tell people not to take her lightly, she proceeds to post on Instagram about how she is capable of using the police to jail the Twitter user, flaming her before admitting that she had done so before. Girl, if you throw your shit to the point of trying to get the national police to arrest some random Twitter anon, you need to go to therapy. And seriously, this is a PA encouraging all based Indonesians to go take care of their mental health. Mental health is important unless you want to end up like Yasmin, please. But that's not the issue. Without opening a can of worms about her career track, the fact this unstable NPC is able to get a job at the presidential office and still retains her job there after intending to jail someone without warrant truly raises question regarding our nation's commitment to democracy. Like, bro, this woman is obviously authoritarian as and doesn't respect free speech, citing it as slander. She doesn't even register that this is not even about her, possibly. And there she is, she's still there receiving allowance from taxpayers after that public fumble? Bruh. As buzzer, I'm fanatically loyal to the government, and so I'm saying this out of my fanatical loyalty to the government to remove her from office and put me there instead. Anyways, my point being, NPCs like these are a sign that democracy is waning in our younger generation. And while yes, I do believe democracy is a tool, democracy is also a commodity. It doesn't seem that Indonesia is heading there though. The more we march forward, the more perverted our views of democracy have become. It's important to instill the value of democracy as checks and balances, not the end, because democracy can cause chaos if it's not used wisely. That's why democracy only works when you're putting people accountable to their own actions. And boomers don't understand that democracy can function that way. Like, how are we supposed to improve as a country when we do not use democracy as a tool of accountability? We have to maintain some level of democracy and some value to it so that it does not encourage NPCs like Yasmin to take power. But again, it's going to be an uphill battle when undemocratic boomers are in office for 3 decades, churning so much despair-inducing laws and policies that makes one adopt the boomer mindset to cope and survive. If so, then it's going to spawn so many questions regarding our country and how we want to be perceived. What is the Indonesian identity? Is it something authoritarian, centralized, and consensus-based, or is it democratic, dynamic, and decentralized? What exactly do we want then? Do we want to continue regarding democracy as a tool or as a value? These unclear, unanswered questions will leave so much debate regarding what we are as a nation, and it will also influence an awkward division between people arguing over how being authoritarian is good in a democratic country and being democratic is good for a developing country. Like, imagine what we look like to China and America. Think about it. Reeling back to how under Jokowi, democracy is being decreased at the cost of growing our economy. This raises the question whether or not civil liberties in Indonesia should be compromised for growth. The trend seems to be the latter, as a pragmatic approach towards our governance contributes to the economy. So it seems the future of democracy is undecided in Indonesia. We thought things are going to be looking up since the Reformation, but we realized that democracy is complex and so we backslide. Will the generational divide push the country towards a democratic renewal as younger voices become more dominant, or does it set the stage for a potential backslide into authoritarianism as skepticism and pragmatism grow among those with institutional power? I feel like it's a question we should ask ourselves as a nation if we can look beyond democracy as a tool or as a value. And hopefully, whatever choice we take will shape our consistency in going about our state, because let's face it, none of us have a middle ground we can agree on. We can't call ourselves a democracy because the way our politicians operate is very authoritarian, such as softly stamping out opposition, and we can't really call ourselves authoritarian because we can still vote and express our opinions. See, this is awkward. We can't decide which is which, and that is both humiliating and awkward. And so I think this circles back to us rediscovering the importance of democracy in August. Will the younger generation replace the expiring boomers and finally enshrine democracy in our culture, or will the younger generation succumb to the difficulties and adopt a conniving attitude? That's a question that, again, only we can answer. If you'd like to discuss more about democracy, feel free to join my Discord server, which is on the link below. Don't forget to like and comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next Based Indonesian episode. See ya, Based Indonesians.
Subscribe to the Based Indonesian show. Dijamin halal